Hi, my name is Mike Kunda, and I am a Rocky fan. First and foremost, I currently live in Philadelphia. I've been here a little while, but I was born and raised in a little town north of here called Scranton, Pennsylvania. Type of town where some of the teachers, if you're unlucky enough, they might suggest dreams are for fools. Dreams are for idealistic thinking that has no place. I was told basically work in a warehouse, it's a smarter bet. I did not follow such advice. When that's what I wanted to be, when I grew up, I simply said I wanted to be Rocky. I wanted to walk around the streets of Philadelphia with the fedora and the leather jacket, and I wanted to get paid to promote Rocky. Well, such a thing was a joke in 1985. But I kept pursuing it. And, if you guys are interested, maybe I'll tell you a little bit more on these little video vignettes. So, anyways, keep punching. Okay, so, like yous, I got to pay the bills too, right? Well, I had a series of jobs for the last 30 years. Mostly I've been working 2-3 jobs at the same time to bring in the kind of money because I'm not a very bright individual. I didn't do very well in school. So I kind of had to figure it out as I go along. But the thing is, we all got to figure it out as we go along. College, no college, smart, not that smart. We're always still figuring. So you should erase that from the negatives because everybody's figuring. It's a figure in life, you know what I mean? And you just can't erase things and start over. You got to just keep moving forward, like Rocky says. But it's not always so easy. So much so that I've been fired from probably about 23 or 24 jobs. Mostly low level, not much future in them. And I knew that. Not until I went to the police academy did I really begin to get maturity in my early 20s. The police academy gave me something I had been lacking my entire life, which was self-confidence. I'd actually done quite well there. But the problem with the police academy is when you do well, people notice. And I got a job immediately out of the academy. And this is the early 90s. And I did it for about 4.5 years, 5 years. But I saw a lot of things I didn't like amongst my fellow men and women in blue. They weren't all bad. There were some very good people I worked with, but I don't know. It left a negative impact on me, and I didn't want to be part of it. So I had to get out of it. And, also I was not politically connected, and that's how things work in a small town. Anyways, I guess I should jump back a little bit, talk a little more about Rocky. I was born with a gene that I just could not turn on, a security gene. I was so insecure as a kid, no matter what I would do, I could not fit in. I was always square peg, round hole, and I always found that costumes and my imagination would help. When I saw Rocky for the first time, I was 11 years old. It was 1979 on television. And I had been pushed around on the schoolyard because I was a very small child at the time. I'm only 5'10". I'm not a very large guy. And I was very petite as a child. And so schoolyard bullies would push you around. That's just what they do. And so this imagination I had used to fill in the gaps. In other words, my dad was a master tailor, and we didn't have a lot of money. So he would cobble together Halloween costumes for me as a young boy. And like Zorro, the Lone Ranger. But I would leave these costumes on all the time. I would just leave them on year round. And I didn't really fit in. Until one time my mother bought me a Superman costume, and I wore it underneath my school clothes. And I had a big hump on my back where the cape was, tucked under my shirt. I looked like Quasimodo, so didn't go over very well. It was an epic failure. Well, seeing Rocky opened up my world. And it wasn't, at first I didn't understand what the connection was. But then I did. You got to remember, I'm a little kid, 11 years old, good parents, loving parents, bills are always paid. What was the connection to Rocky? There was an underdog theme there. Every night before bed when I was 3 years old, my mother would read a book to me called Jonathan Livingston Seagull, about a seagull who wanted to fly higher and farther than any other seagull. But he was told, no, that's not your job. Your job is to scavenge food and bring it back for the rest of the seagull community. Well, he does that, but on the side, he believes in himself enough to keep aspiring to the highest of heights, which he does. It's a good book, and it's kind of a kid's book, but it's a good book. Anyways, the underdog theme was really relevant to me, and I connected with Rocky. I guess it pays off to read to your kids at night. When I saw Rocky walking around his neighborhood with the fedora, the leather jacket, cut-off gloves, it was just an extension of his life, where he was living. It was a metaphor, a suit of armor. When he had the hat and the coat on, everyone yells at Rocky in the first movie, but it bounces off of him like bullets off Superman's chest. He doesn't, metaphorically, it doesn't get to him. But that's what that hat and coat was to me, a suit of armor. And I had to get one. So my grandfather, who was an old coal miner, he gave me his black fedora and leather jacket. He knew I liked dressing up, and he thought this might help on my journey. But he also pointed out a very interesting fact. I'm dressing like a fighter, and I can't fight. And kids are going to come after me. And he actually said, life is going to come after you in different ways. Maybe not a physical altercation, but life will come after you. And you got to be prepared, because if not, it's going to be a hard knock life. You know? Well, my mother took me to a local boxing gym, and the results were not good. Because I always work from a place of fear in my psyche, I didn't have that anger that a lot of kids had. I didn't have that competitive gene to be better. My parents were so good to me. Both my mother and father were equally different, but equally loving and supportive. I didn't have that need for attention. So it ended disastrously. I started crying in the boxing ring, quit right there, take the headgear, the gloves off. I just didn't believe in myself enough. And my father comes home, my mother explains to him, and here my father does something quite brilliant. We didn't have a Blockbuster near us at the time, and we couldn't afford a new VCR, so he purchased a used VCR. And Rocky was on again, and he records it, and I would watch it every day. So in other words, whatever I learned in the gym, how to really fight, throw a punch, and whatever I learned movie boxing, I would emulate it on a punching bag in my basement that my father hung up. Well, it seemed to pay off. So now I'm 15, 16 years old. I'm wearing the Rocky hat and coat, walking around my neighborhood. I get into a few fights. I don't win any of them, but I don't cry and run away. I fight back. I try. And because I'm so odd with the hat and the coat, trying to affect a Stallone look, which I hadn't perfected yet, people just left me alone. So that brings us now to 1985, my senior year, where I told you about the guidance counselor. Says, you can't be Rocky. It doesn't exist, son. The job doesn't exist. I said, but what if it did? All right. So then I go through a bunch of years, police academy. In the meantime, in 1989, I met my wife, Sue. And if I didn't have her, I wouldn't be able to do any of this. I would never have had the support system that I really needed to make it through life. Anyways, this is where it starts to get interesting. Let's see. What do I do for a living? Well, I'm a Rocky impersonator, actually. And I wrote a book. Right here, you'll see it's called Cue the Rocky Music. Now, I'm not really much of a writer, but I got a little bit of a talent for that. Anyways, the Rocky tours were kind of slow building early on in 2006, 07, 08, 09. And then the American economy crashed in 2008, and I was out of my corporate job that I was in. I hated the job, but I didn't really have much talent or skills to get any better paying job. And for a guy like me, it was a decent paycheck. Anyways, I revisited an old idea I had. What if I could take people from around the world and show them Rocky Land? What if I could go from location to location and tell them stories about it? That will be interesting. The tours are pretty incredible. And I've built up such a nice friendship with Sly that he's told me many, many stories about Rocky and what went on during filming, why the decisions were made that he made, why were certain locations chosen. And I tell these stories to the people that take my tour. And when we started, I was doing 4 or 5 a year. Now I do about 40 a month, with the exception of COVID. Things are ramping back up again. Anyways, not quite sure how much more detail I could go into. There's so many stories to tell. But that's kind of a 30,000 foot view of my life. You want to hear more details? I'll tell you. Let me go see those questions you guys sent. Maybe I can answer them. You know, I think we've all been bullied on one level or another. And it's a little different when, maybe it isn't any different when you're in grade school, because really everything is all relative. What you know about life, what your experiences are. You know, it's one thing when children do it because they don't understand, but I think it's actually worse when adults do it because they have been around, they should know better, they should be more mature and a little more mentally on the spot to kind of understand when people are different. So I've learned not to judge people. I don't always understand people. People are odd. But I also don't go out of my way to make them feel bad or insecure because I think we all got a lot of that. And unfortunately, that's just life. So until you stand up to a bully, they're going to keep coming after you in one way or another. So my advice on that, keep fighting back. Don't take it. Don't ever take being bullied. Don't. I didn't. That he gives to his son. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. That whole speech is pure perfection. It really is. Because in it, he talks about if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits, not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. And all of you are better than that. All of you. All of us. I mean, nobody's got the right to stand in your way. Listen to your gut, trust yourself, and again, surround yourself with people who have very similar interests in common. You don't need to have a lot of friends. You just need to have a few right friends. Anyways, keep punching. I failed at quite a lot of things. Each and every one of those failures, I took something from. So I guess you could say the more I failed, the more I learned. When I was good at something or when I won something, which was few and far between, I didn't reflect. But when I lost, when I was inadequate, when I didn't measure up, I often would sit back and I would go over it. What did I do wrong? How could I avoid it next time? How could I be better? Whatever it meant, whether it was in the corporate world, whether it was in a physical world, whatever it was, I would always think and try to learn from it. You know, Sly signs off a lot of his videos with the keep punching. I do that too. I stole that from Sly. But keep punching is a universal metaphor. Don't stop. Don't stop until you're dead. Keep going after what it is you want. And try to surround yourself with people who have your best interests at heart. Keep punching.